and support to the less privileged and the indigent. For starters, my Odyssey as a leader in this great city started in May 2006 when I was elected Member of Parliament for Kampala Central at the age of 36. And is ending today, on this memorable day, the 11th of May 2026, as I mark my 56th birthday anniversary. God gave me a lot. Thank you. I'm humbled. I am humbled. Thank you. Guided by the philosophy of shared vision, shared prosperity, and rule of law, my state stewardship remained unwaveringly intentional in the pursuit of a seismic shift in leadership with a laser focus on 6 fundamental pillars, to wit, corporate governance and rule of law. That has been pillar number 1 anchor in my leadership. Proper planning and sustainable development. Accountability and transparency, and you wrote attest to that fact. Equity and social justice. Frugality and prioritization in the budgeting processes. Promotion of Kampala as a hub for investment. With this checkered history and evolution journey right from Ekibuga under the Kabaka of Uganda during the pre-colonial era to a township in 1903 and a full-fledged municipality in 1950 with Samaini as the first mayor of Kampala, up to the colonial period, Kampala has been a melting pot with varied and complex dynamics the successive mayors have had to contend with. Inevitably, and I want to be on record, I have had to walk on eggshells and navigate a political train fraught with the cocktail of leaders, excluding the lower administrative units, the LC1 and LC2s, 2 ministers, 6 resident commissioners, and 18 assistants, executive director, deputy executive director, and 10 directors, as well as 5 town clerks, with the which largely accounts for a political imbroglio that has bedeviled the institution of KCCA since inception. That structure, which is a more that I have talked about there. In simple terms, my journey at Steel Hall has not been a walk in the park. And indeed, it would not be an overstatement if one asserted that out of the 19 mayors that have held the state helm since inception, I have had the most tumultuous tenure with the heavy political whirlwinds. You know whirlwinds? The leaders I had to endure in foiling the grand scheme of disenfranchising Kampalans, including the industrial scale rigging of the 23rd February 2011 Kampala mayor elections that were inevitably cancelled midway the polls, and forcing a rerun on 14th March 2011 were nothing but a danger for a bumpy road that awaited me ahead. It has been such a huge nightmare for me as the pioneer road mayor and the statutory overall political head of the city, superintending over such a nebulous governance structure, and inevitably, my 15-year journey at Steel Hall turned out to be a ride on an unruly horse or a bull. I've been on an unruly horse jumping. You try to guide it this way, it takes this direction. You try to, oh my God, that has been the journey of Lukwago Erias at Steel Hall here. It wouldn't be far-fetched if one suggested that this grotesque phenomenon explains the high turnover in the clusters of the central government who have been sent here to represent the president and the central government over the years. And the records are here. Over those 15 years, I have had a turnover of 7 ministers. Cabinet ministers we are talking about. Dr. Beatrice Awaddeyo, Honorable Lukwago Masiko, Honorable Mululi Mukasa, Franka Tumwebaze, Betty Amongi, Betty Namisango Kamya, Tuomwe, and the current Hajat Minister Amanda. So I've had 7 cabinet ministers over a period of 5 years, about 15 years. 2 state ministers, because this position came much later in 2019 after the amendment of the law. That's the reason we have had only 2 state ministers, Benny Namgwanya Ugembe and the current one cabinet of Fatogabia. 6 substantive resident state commissioners, excluding a whole of deputies and assistants. I've told you, in total, when you add the deputies and assistants, they are 18 in number. So the substantive ones are the ones you have mentioned here. Samuel Mbibaza Ashaka, Farida Mayanja Apima, Udu Hussein, Amina Rukanga, Jane Asimwe Muhindo, and the current one, Ajuma Lule Mawia. 5 executive directors. Jennifer Semakula Musisi, the pioneer ED, Engineer Andrew Chitaka was in acting capacity, Dorothy Chisaka, Franka Jakana Rusa in acting, and the current one, Ajat Sharifa Zeki. It is equally imperative to note that the cluster of elected leadership has also registered a significant rate of turnover, with each election cycle returning less than 10% of the councillors and the division mayors. I think you can also attest to that fact. On my part, I have had 3 deputy road mayors, namely His Worship Sulaiman Sebada Chidandala, Her Worship Hajat Sala Kanyike Sebakala, and Her Worship Doreen Nyandula is right before you. The case of His Worship Sulaiman Chidandala is quite intriguing, for it was the spark that ignited the cacophony that would characterize all the subsequent boisterous council meetings, either chaired by the road mayor who doubled as the speaker. The NRM councillors, who had a strong numerical strength with the 20 out of 30 members, claimed as of right that the deputy road mayor should be designated by their party and imposed on him. To date, I am yet to recover from the shock I suffered shortly after assuming office as the road mayor in May 2011, when a then NRM councillor, Ajati Madina Seloko, currently MP elected for Kawempe South, came to the office of the road mayor with information that she had defeated the late Sewamba Baker in the NRM caucus primaries for the deputy road mayor's position, allegedly conducted at the State House by President Museveni himself. You can imagine you are seated here, Lord Mayor, and you are being told that there are primaries for the deputy Lord Mayor somewhere else. The acrimony and the impasse intensified in the wake of my recalcitrance towards the maneuvers, culminating into the botched impeachment, arguably the darkest episode of my 15-year journey, which happened on Monday, 25th November 2013, I can add at exactly 9 without even a second. Past 9. It was exactly 9. Monday, 25th November 2013, when that botched impeachment was carried out. That deed of infamy will live to haunt me all through my life. I insist, this deed of infamy witnessed political obscenities of unparalleled magnitude in the institution of KCCA, leading to the illegal closure of the road mayor's para for the rest of the term, with the attendant denigration of my immaculate record. The key political shenanigans that spiced up the whole melodrama which characterized that whatever scene were as follows. Number 1, the present defiance of 3 high court orders issued by the registrar, His Worship Wanida, another one by His Worship Justice Yasini Nyanzi, and Honorable Lady Justice Lydia Mugambe, who cited and condemned the then Minister Franka Tumwebaze, the Executive Director Jennifer Semakula Musisi, Attorney General Peter Nyombi, and the chairman of the Electoral Commission, Engineer Bandi Chikundu, who was at that time organizing a by-election in total defiance of a court order that had blocked the impeachment process. And he had set a date for a by-election, and I had been disqualified because I had been impeached and I wouldn't stand in the by-election. The brutalization and the dehumanization of my lawyers, and the process servers, together with Honorable Alan Sewanya, who attempted to serve the interim court order, that will also remain in our history here. The torture and the glaring injustice meted out against me during the Justice Bamugemelere Probe Committee proceedings and throughout the entire impeachment processes. The bizarre maneuvers to have council fully constituted by hastily and illegally conducting elections of the 4 councillors representing professional bodies, engineers, lawyers, architects, and doctors, following the Justice order that faulted the government for failing to conduct those elections for over 3 years, and thus blocking the processing of the Bamugemelere report that had convicted me without a fully constituted council. Machinations were then engineered to have those councillors elected on 19th November 2013, illegally sworn in by Honorable Frank Atuwebas on 21st November, and on 25th November, just 3 days later, they were sworn in. I mean, they sat to pass a resolution of impeachment. I was here, I was called to call a council to swear in those councillors so that they come and impeach me. I declined to call that council. I was particularly vexed by the uncanny conduct of the so-called professional councillors, voting me out of office. Yet the impeachment council of 25th November was their first sitting, having been elected and sworn in barely 4 days before the council sitting. And for the case of Kanu Frank, the then councillor representing the Uganda Law Society, he had won in votes with only 4 votes out of 5 voters who constituted the Electoral College. With the then presidents of Uganda Law Society, Uganda Law Society, Ruth Sebatindira, Vice President Ernest Kalibara, and Secretary Nicholas Obio boycotting the bogus elections, while the rest of over 4,000 members of Uganda Law Society were disenfranchised by statutory instrument issued by Frank Tuwebase with a clause restricting voter eligibility to only the 8 committee members. Let me pause and explain this. The law provided for 4 councillors representing statutory bodies, professional bodies. They refused to conduct elections for 3 years, from 2011 to 2012. When it came to the time of impeachment, God ruled and said, you cannot proceed, because the law talks of 2/3 of all the councillors. They had not constituted the council fully. So the Minister Frank Tuwebase asked the disciplinary instrument, and they conducted those elections in a hushed manner. And what happened? No groups are total Africana here. Only five members of the executive turned up to vote a council representing Uganda Law Society. Only 5, and there were 2 candidates, Franka Kanuo and Harriet Magala. Franka Kanuo got 4 votes, Harriet Magala got 1. So Franka Kanuo was declared the winner with 4 votes. And he came here to vote out the Lord Mayor, who had been elected by 220,000 voters. You come with only 4 votes. Put yourself in my shoes. The processes in respect to other professional bodies we are not in any way different, as Miss Vena Musiganisa Mbabas, who emerged the winner for the slot of Uganda for the Society of Architects, hold only 7 votes out of 14. Ironically, council was by default dissolved on the same day of the botched impeachment. Cesar was the speaker, and the same council had refused to approve my debut, and therefore councils could not convene till the term lapsed in May 2016. And as fate would have it, councillors for professional bodies had their maiden and last council on that day of infamy. The conduct of councillors representing professional bodies was diametrically inconsistent with the spirit of the KCC Act, since it had been hoped that they would infuse the institution of KCC or council with the professional wisdom. Consequently, the 2019 amendment to the KCC Act that stripped the Lord Mayor of the role of the Speaker and created an executive body also scrapped the force laws of 4 councillors representing professional bodies. We needed to have this on record so that you get to understand. At one time we had 4 councillors representing professional bodies, now they are not there. What happened? The record is there for you. And also, for you to understand the dynamics of councils, that when you don't have a majority from your side, you can always get a deputy road mayor from the opposite side by force. And the situation may become worse. Another ugly episode of similar magnitude was the 10th August 2024 devastating Chite's West Side catastrophe, which claimed at least 35 lives, with many bodies still buried in the debris. Needless to mention, the tremors thereof, which got many of us bent out of shape, and some purged out of the institution, those who were arrested and prosecuted, are still reverberating within and outside the corridors. Many have not been compensated after the president. All in all, needing the hurdles notwithstanding, it has been such an amazing journey, full of memorable experiences, lessons and eventful encounters, and bonding with the different stakeholders, all of you inclusive here, in all spheres of life, both domestically and internationally. And I will eternally remain grateful to the Almighty Allah for the countless blessings, and the people of Kampala for the golden opportunity and the trust given to me for a record period of 15 years as their #1 city supreme. I don't take that for granted. Thank you, the Lord. Thank you, the people of Kampala. Thank you, all the stakeholders, for that wonderful opportunity accorded to me to showcase my potential, which I am sure and confident all of you can attest to. Now, I will go to the challenges. After the challenges, the rest I will just flip through. I will not go into details. You permit me, the challenges are important so that we get to understand why there has been dismal performance somewhere. These are challenges that we have encountered. Operating under a new and defective legislation. It is quite that the KCC Act 2010 or 2011 was designed with the spirit of fixing the political dynamics of the day by eroding the influence of the elected leaders, usurp their mandate and vest the same in the central government. Resultantly, the said instrument is not only fraught with contradictions, inconsistencies and grey areas, but has also occasioned a terrible conundrum that has baffled all actors since inception. As an anecdote, the said law created a number of power centers with overriding mandates, fused all the hitherto self-accounting administrative units, that is the authority and the urban division councils, into one, albeit with illusory devolved functions, and emasculated the executive authority of the Lord Mayor, thereby engendering a potentially volatile and explosive political environment. Little wonder that this law has been touted by cynics and detractors as a potent weapon against my leadership, which they have rhetorically described as ceremonial led mayor. For the last 15 years, my detractors have always denigrated me as being a ceremonial led mayor. But as the term is coming to an end, they are asking me to account for what I have done. What an I if I've been a ceremonial led mayor for the 15 years according to the cynics, then you ask me, what have you done? Okay, I put on the gowns. Bloated leadership, that is challenge number 2. The current bloated leadership creates significant operational inefficiencies and administrative bottlenecks, as noted herein before. The fundamental flawed 2011 hybrid system adopted without adequate benchmarking has resulted in the creation of a bloated leadership structure comprising of the already mentioned huge number of leaders and their different clusters. Besides the conflicting mandates and inherent contradictions, this extra large structure, when you get XXL, actually it should be 5XL structure, imposes a huge financial burden to the institution of KCCL, with a wage bill for the 467 political leaders amounting to, which I did not put there, and for the 1,845 technical staff, excluding the 4,122 cleaners, I didn't put the amount. The staff structures in the Ministry of Kampala, I didn't put the amount. And the RCCs, the amount is not there, and their staff, as well as members of the various statutory bodies. If you compute those figures, you will see the burden the bloated structure is imposing on the people of Kampala. Much as the political leadership has been slashed by nearly 50% in the just concluded 2026 election cycle, a rational approach to a leaner and efficient model is still elusive. Okay, the councillors were cut by almost a half, but that is not enough. More is needed to rationalize the bloated leadership structure. Governance overseen by presidential decrees. Challenge number 3. The KCC administration has regrettably witnessed direct control and intervention by the president over the capital state's governance, almost in all sectors: public transport, markets, circles, allocation of public assets, land and drainage channels, procurement processes, physical and neighborhood planning, etc. Related to this is the uncodified policy of subjecting access to charity fund by the institution of KCC from foreign philanthropists to the presidential approval. This policy thwarted the efforts of the Office of the Road Mayor to secure charity funds from several potential donors, including the US $500,000, that is 1.8 billion, from Hilton Foundation through the New York-based Mayor's Migration Council, where I have been a founding executive member. We subsequently resolved to channel this support meant for the urban refugees and street kids through an NGO called the Makasi Foundation, where it was unfortunately misappropriated by the NGO leadership and fled the country. Questions are always posed because you read this. This gentleman called Soros is the founder of Open Society Foundations, and he started Mayor's Migration Council. I've been a body member for so many years, founding a body member. And in the honor of my contribution, they said they will help finance the project that I presented before them. The other refugees were not in the camps, because the national policy is to take care of those refugees who are in camps, but those who run for the city, who takes care of them, and the street kids who come from Karamoja. So they appreciated this and said we shall start with an initial support of $500,000 US, $500,000 US, 1.8 billion. Now, getting this money, you had to go through hurdles. It was a nightmare until we learned that it has to be approved by President Museveni himself. And the donors could not wait. So creatively, we navigated around the law and got Makasi, an NGO. Makasi, the money was given by Hilton through Mayor's Migration Council. The moment 1.8 billion landed on their account, they closed the organization, closed the account, and fled the country. Nasaka. It is paradoxical that the presidential directives frequently override the policies established by elected leadership, undermining council's oversight role and rendering the policy and legislative role ineffective. The situation is compounded by the fact that KCC as an entity is currently housed in the president's office, where it is being treated as an appendage of State House, as opposed to an independent, self-accounting institution with unelected leadership that has got a social contract with with the people of Kampala. I wish you take a note of that. This direct intervention in the state administration by the president is reminiscent of the archaic and repugnant practice in the olden days when we had the city and the country at large ruled by decrees, executive orders, and colonial policies. Challenge number 4. Mandate overlap by the ministers for Kampala and resident city commissioners. Proper management of the city has been greatly impaired by the incongruous practice of the ministers for Kampala and other cities, whose statutory mandate is largely supervisory and guidance in nature, turning to day-to-day administration of the institution and micromanagement of the state affairs to the extent of allocating themselves adjudicatory powers over petty local disputes ordinarily under the jurisdiction of local administrative units. Kanchi bagambe ki mva wano kusiteko naye nga wakyali ba minisita nti bakola emirimu gy'ekitongole. Minisita ali mu butale, minisita ali mu maboda, minisita ali mu batemberi, minisita atuubatirawo obusango obulina okukozesebwa abeerusi wameerusi tu nga tukyalira ba minisita wano mu kibuga Kampala. Olugendo lukyali lunene olw'ereputed leadership okukola emirimu gyabwe. Whereas the KCC Act designates the Lord Mayor as the overall political head of the city, successful ministers for Kampala have persistently and aggressively sought to assume that role, which has invited a relentless pushback from my office, thereby engendering a belligerent and antagonistic relationship between the two offices. In the aftermath of the botched impeachment, the then Minister for Kampala, Honorable Frank Mwebas, mooted a radical proposal to completely do away with the office of the Lord Mayor by, among other things, creating a governance body similar to those of other authorities. While his successor, the Honorable Betty Kamya, had inserted a clause in the bill that amended the KCC Act in 2019, designating the Minister for Kampala as the overall political head of the city, which moves were successfully challenged. Impeachment olwagwa bweti, Honorable Frank Tumwebaze n'agamba atuleeta amendment yakugyawo council, yakugyawo authority, nti bateekewo board ng'eziri mu URA, board ng'eziri mu government agencies endala, National Water and Sewage Board n'ewalala. Era batuukirirako eyali Prime Minister omugenzi Professor Apollo Nsibange ne bamugamba ogenda okuba pioneer board chairman. Era waliwo kibizinesi etukigwana kati olaleeta amendment mu 2018-19 Honorable Betty Kamya n'agamba nekino ekifo kya political head tukigyewo, minisita yabaabira political head, olutalo ne lukoya era nze mukyakoya. Number 10, academic qualifications for authority leaders. While the Kampala Capital City Act provides for a minimum of A-level certificate for the Lord Mayor and Deputy Lord Mayor, it imposes no such academic requirements for division mayors and councillors. This lacuna has triggered the agitations from sections of our people to amend the law and attach academic qualification to the city authority leadership positions commensurate to the required standards of capital city administration. The judge of the was saying recommendations, which has been a problem. Ebyo sirumamu sikirumamu okubeera ne capital city ng'olina Lord Mayor nga bamugamba nti oteekeddwa okuba ne A-level oba oli ku level ya member parliament ne deputy Lord Mayor, ate n'ogamba nti bakansala gyekuli qualifications nti ajja oba wapiwano oba teyayitako omusomero ng'ojjanyirire omulonda afuuke kansala oba capital city. Furthermore, under section 10 of the KCC Act, the Deputy Lord Mayor is required to possess a minimum of an A-level certificate. The challenge lies in the fact that the Deputy Lord Mayor must be appointed from amongst the councillors who by law are not required to have any academic qualifications. KCC is having a vacant position for the Deputy Lord Mayor if none of the elected councillors meets the mandatory academic qualifications for the position of Deputy Lord Mayor. Conversely, the Lord Mayor will be compelled to appoint a Deputy Lord Mayor who may not be of his or her choice in the event that there is only one person who meets the required academic qualification from the elected councillors. The technical government of Funago deputy road mayor in Oakland signs of the road mayor. Gaina level points equivalent. Name of Mujamu council, the qualification for councillors. The bank is not on a fund. Singapore never cancel now that a Puya in a level. Deputy Romulo, Jawujawan. Romulo Mujawan. Over Singapore, Manzan opposition in the way now. Council of your qualifications. Who do grow? Sugama to Chapra in Mokoro in Nari. They watch on the deputy of my choice. So there is a problem with the law. Number 6. City identity crisis. Kampala faces a crisis of identity stemming from rapid and planned growth spanning several decades. Transitioning from a small city meant for 300,000 people at independence to a current hodgepodge of a congested metropolis of over 1.7 million residents and over 4 million transient population. The city lacks a clear cohesive identity because of the chaotic mix of administrative, industrial, and commercial influence, giving it a slummy look. Though the city started as an administrative fort during the pre-colonial period, with the establishment of the royal palace at Kasuli Nabragara by the Kabaka Mtesa I, it turned into a military garrison and 20 posts in 1890 by British colonials led by Captain Lukwago, and the birth of structured commerce occurring shortly after the turn of the 20th century with the arrival of the Indian merchant, Alindina Vizra. Originally it was an administrative seat, Kampala, during Mutesa I, with his seat at Nabragara. Then when Alindina Vizra came here and established his shop, all of you have studied about the first businessman in Kampala was Alindina Vizra, commerce crept in, and then he started taking that direction of a commercial city. Upon assuming the office, subsequently, for most of the colonial era, Entebbe served as the administrative capital, having originated as a garrison for Sajera and Poto, while Kampala developed as the commercial hub. However, Kampala trajectory shifted in 1931 with the arrival of the Uganda Railway that sparked industrialization. Kampala then evolved into a dual commercial industrial city, while administrative power remained in Entebbe. Upon Uganda's independence in 1962, Kampala was established as a new capital city and administrative seat of the country, hence creating a hodgepodge of administrative, industrial, and commercial city. You've heard the genesis. Initially, administrative city under Mutesa I. When the colonialists came here, and the Indians came here, commerce crept in. When we got Uganda Railway in the Kampala here in 1931, then the industries started growing up. So then you had a hodgepodge. You started having a hodgepodge. Administrative, commercial, and industrial. Upon assuming office as the pioneer road mayor, we embarked on a journey of developing Kampala as a purely commercial and lakefront city with a gigantic project of crafting and adopting a new structural plan, which is still work in progress. Suffice to note that steering the transformation caravan of Kampala to make it a functional metropolis befitting the Pearl of Africa without a clear city identity or direction has been such a Herculean task, only comparable to navigating a turbulent sea or ocean in a ship devoid of a compass. I will give the recommendations on that later. Number 7, inadequate funding. Inadequate funding for the development agenda in the city has remained a perpetual and enigmatic challenge for several decades. During my first term, the institution of KCC rolled out the KCC Strategic Plan 2014-2019 under Section 46 law, which was aligned to the National Vision 2040 and the Greater Kampala Metropolitan Area Development Framework 2040. And the theme was laying the foundation for the transformation of the city. This method the funding for the implementation of the city strategic plan for the period of the next 5 years was 1.5 billion US dollar, approximately 5.1 trillion. Unfortunately, by close of the planning period, they are already disbursed 47%. That is 2.4 trillion. In September 2020, after the expiry of the first strategic plan, we prepared a new strategic plan for 2021-2025 and made a commitment that by June 2025, Kampala will be a well-planned, functional, and sustainable city that provides economic opportunities. The projected funding for implementation of the strategic plan was 7 trillion. However, it was revised along the way to 10.3 trillion due to fluctuating macroeconomic conditions. Unfortunately, or regrettably, by the end of the planning period, only 28% had been given to us, leading to a performance of only 35.5%. Now, this is now to the incoming leadership. They should take a note of this. On 30th September 2025, we prepared and launched a new 5-year strategic plan for 2026 to 2030. Their period of 5 years, we have already rolled out that plan. A good one, as a bedrock for the structural transformation of our city over the next 5 years. So they will have no problem. With the planning, I assure those who are going to take office, we have done the necessary planning. The structural plan is already there. With all what we want to put in place, everything is there. This rather grandiose and ambitious plan requires a projected resource envelope of 11.9 trillion, which translates into an annual funding requirement of approximately 2.4 trillion. Kanchibagambiki, plan ey'emyaka etaano, 2026 twagimaze era tukireseewo. Naye nga yeetaaga trillion 11.9 11.9 trillion. Nga buli mwaka gavumenti erina okuwaayo 2.4 trillion. Unfortunately, for the first financial year of the implementation of this strategic plan, our budget was 916 billion, less than a trillion. Nga balina okutuwa 2.4 trillion, batuwa 916. Even the Uganda State's 1 trillion budget allocation for financial year 2026-2027 is significantly low compared to the projected target of Uganda State's 2.4 trillion annually, and is likely to turn the aforesaid magnificent strategic plan into a fiasco. The plan is twakoze emyaka etaano mu mwaka 2026-2027 budget twagimaze. Naye era twabadde tusente tukwamanta pamante. Gavumenti eyalinga bejjatuwa 2.4 trillion buli mwaka, mu budget bataddemu 1 trillion. So buli ali eyo nga oli mukulembeze ogenda taking over, manya budget gyegenda okusangawo n'olutalo lwemwolekedde. My leadership has persistently demanded that the central government remits at least 3% of the national budget to KCCA, given the fact that Kampala generates over 65% of the national GDP, but to nothing. 2.8. This is now challenge number 8. I told you, Jakusisongas on the phone, Mugoni is Malayo, MJC Jakusoma detail. Then the Lalajago Itamuis. KCCA is enjoying under the KCCA Act to make its budgetary appropriations incorporating the urban division projections. In addition, pursuant to the provisions of Section 22, the city leadership is mandated to prepare the city budget with the technical assistance from management and submit the same to the Authority Council for consideration. However, the current program-based budgeting system, which was adopted by the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, empowered the technical working groups to musically share the money amongst the different government agencies contrary to the aforesaid provisions of the law. Over the years, the technical working groups have misaligned the KCCA budget by largely focusing on consumption and on current expenditure, neglecting the institution's strategic development needs, highlighted in our strategic plans, which has adversely affected our transformation journey. The appropriations made under the current budgeting system are almost cast in stone, with no room for adjustment by the political leadership, which oftentimes is required to just rubber stamp the same. The institution budget is persistently choked by huge administrative costs, salaries, capacity building, debt servicing, litigation costs, etc., as indicated in the allocation for the current 2 financial years as here. Previously, the situation had been compounded by intermittent garnishing orders of freezing legacy accounts on account of uncleared debts or liabilities, though the situation has of late slightly improved. Maybe the India has helped a little to improve on the situation, but we have suffered these problems perpetually. You can see, I have put here this budget specifically for people to appreciate. Njakulasaba, chitadewa, largely tulina consumption budget, and has been a problem. Consumption budget, the development budget, ebisinga birimu unfunded priorities. Working groups, the Secretary Ministry of Finance, njagala kubaga ebintu byange. Muntu totogedde kubanga allocations zaffe mbadde temusikola. High level of informality. I may not go into detail, this is quite detailed, but just a few examples. The high level of informality in Kampala is a defining character covering everything from construction, business, labor market, sanitation, settlement, housing to transport. While Kampala is slightly better than other cities in the country, in terms of structured employment, informality still dominates, with approximately 73% of its workforce engaged in informal employment, lacking formal worker spaces and support. Kampala's urban poor have turned into unregulated street vending, transport, among other informal. Roughly 60% of Kampala's population lives in informal settlements or slums, which are widely dispersed rather than concentrated in one area. By 2017, it was estimated that 50% of the population in the greater Kampala metropolis lives in slum settlements, predominantly near fragile ecosystems, such as wetlands that have been identified for upgrading. However, there are no serious or significant macroeconomic interventions from the central government to reverse the trend. And the situation is not helped because of, on account of the continuous influx of a myriad of refugees from as far as Sudan, Somalia, Eritrea, DRC, who settle in all these slums. Muna mubala, ekibuga, mwendeko abafa bajja, kati Eritrea bajja, Abasomali bajja, Abakongo bajja, gende kabalagala doza capital city yasima, ojosokoloozo olyasimala, oluludawa, ekibuga, so, sikigenza mu detail, naye in South Africa xenophobia n'ebirala tubyeraliikirira. Naye informality is still a problem. Number 10, impunity by elite cartels. Fierce and nasty intermittent run-ins with the marauding elite cartels in the city will always remain a key defining feature of my 15-year journey at State Hall. These marauding cartels are a huge threat to the public good, always on rampage to pass off public land and assets to themselves, including green spaces, educational institutions, health facilities, playgrounds, markets, roads, wetlands, and of late, drainage channels like a natural channel. It is by the grace of the Lord that I survived the death on several occasions in nerve-wracking battles over public assets like Nakasero Market, Bagayadi Market, City Abattoir, Kiseka Market, Natural Settlement, Bati Valley Primary School, Nguruma Health Center, Natural Channel. Majority of these mafias and cartels operate primarily through state protection, institutional manipulation, and false narratives of development, blackmail, and outright illegal threats. However, despite the attempts to demonize and vilify me as being belligerent and anti-development, my resolve has remained unshaken up to this very moment, and I am quite confident posterity will judge me fairly.
قاعد نشرب كل شيء.
قاعد
يا ام فويس
تيك توك لا برنامج تيك توك.
قزعني حتى وانا ضغط ستار. عيوني صبروا. اسمها جو جيم اوف ثرون. عليك ما عليك. يا اخي لا بس ابغى اخطب ضرب واحده الحين ارجع. لعبة حاضرة. تعال أهينك.
صار معك.
دوخني. عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أنا ما اشتريت عمر.
غير إن شاء الله اللي يلود أصبر. أنا غير أطبخ لي شيء يعيش.
الإنسان وهي شامل أتسحق بشيء.
هذه لا دي بنزلها على الستيم يعني على الكمبيوتر عادي العبها باسمك اسحاق. العاب مال سوني عادي نزلها على الكمبيوتر عندي يعني. بي سي ده اسمها جيم اوف ثرون. هي اللعبه تنزل على السوني. سوني 4 ولا 5 هذه صار؟ شو انت الان مسمينا سبيت انا؟
لا تنزل على كل شيء حتى في التليفون تنزل.
سمعت قال كنت حتى على الايباد.